The Preserving Machine, a collection of stories by Philip K. Dick, 1969. This is the 16th novel published in the A Science Fiction Specials Series 1. I use a rating system of 1 through 10 for books. I will rate each short story and then give an overall rating for the collection. None of the short stories in this collection rate lower than 5, so I'm going to cut this in half so that we have some space to put each of the stories on the graphic. Here is the table of contents for the 15 stories found in this collection. Before I start rating the stories, let's talk briefly about the Leo and Diane Dillon cover. Normally they have a painted cover, but this one looks to me like it might be a bit of multimedia. By the way, this is the first printing of this collection. Later in the year 1969, there was a book club hardcover edition. So let's get to the stories. For each of the stories, I'll give you a short, spoiler-free blurb. It can remind you of the story, or if you haven't read it, it may entice you to read it someday. Our first story, The Preserving Machine, is also the name of the collection. What if you could preserve music in the form of an animal? What type of animal would be represented by that music? Would the music be a dove, or a wolf, or an aardvark? And what happens when these animals are now in the wild? This is an appropriate Dickian idea. I think this story looks at our obsession of trying to collect and preserve art. Is it something that we can actually accomplish, or is it transient? Strangely, I found this namesake for the novel to be the weakest story of the bunch. I give it 5 out of 10. The second story is called War Games. What if the manufacturer of games was actually your enemy? As games are product tested, we start to see that perhaps they're meant to condition the children to lose. To lose what? To lose a war. I rate this story 7 out of 10. The third story is titled Upon the Dull Earth. What if the love of your life was drawn into another plane of existence? Could you get her back? This is a horror story of unintended consequences. I give it 8 out of 10. The fourth story is called Roog. It comes from the point of view of a dog. This is a story of perspective. Who do you trust, the dog or the human? And what is a roog? By the way, you might want to say it as roog. I give roog 6 out of 10. The fifth story in the collection is entitled War Veteran. David Unger is an old man sitting on a bench in Central Park. He tries to tell anybody who will listen about his war experiences. The war is between Earth and the colonists from Venus and Mars. But this war hasn't even started. Can you win or prevent a war that hasn't even happened? I give War Veteran 8 out of 10. The sixth story is entitled Top Standby Job. What if the President of the United States was a computer and had been for years? There is a union job to be a standby president in case the computer president failed, which it never has. The solar system is now being invaded by aliens. The computer goes down, and now the union man is president. I give this story 6 out of 10. The seventh story is called What Lies Beyond the Wub. Wub is W-U-B. What if a pig-like creature is purchased by the crewman of a spaceship? And what if the people on the spaceship want to eat this creature? But then the wub starts talking back to the crew. Can you kill and eat a sentient being? I give this story 8 out of 10. The eighth story is a very famous story, maybe the most famous Philip K. Dick story. We can remember it for you wholesale. This story is the inspiration for Total Recall. A man wants to go to Mars, but he's not able to leave his responsibilities on Earth. But what if there was a company that could put the memories in his head as if he had gone? Things go awry when they realize that there is more happening with this man's memory, that his memory has been wiped in the past and now he is starting to remember some things. This is a great story. In my mind, one of the classics of science fiction. I give We Can Remember It For You wholesale 10 out of 10. The ninth story is Captive Market. An old woman is able to straddle time. She's able to travel through time in her truck. She travels from our time to a world of dust that's been destroyed. In that world, there are survivors who rely on her to bring them supplies. They are her captive market. But what happens in the post-apocalyptic future when they try to leave by spaceship? I give this story 9 out of 10. The 10th story is If There Were No Ben Samoli. Maybe the pen is mightier than the sword. We take a look at journalism, but this journalism is done by a computer. So perhaps we should say maybe the bytes are better than the occupiers. Can a war be won by misinformation? I give this futuristic rebellion story 8 out of 10. The 11th story is Retreat Syndrome. What if you've confessed to killing your wife and then you find that she is still alive? And what does this have to do with a war between Earth and the outer planets? A tricky psychological tale of what is reality. I give it 7 out of 10. The 12th story is called The Crawlers. What if radiation caused radical birth defects? The offspring of people became crawlers. Are the crawlers devolved or evolved? Do you kill them or do you ship them away to an island? This is a creepy horror story straight out of the 1950s. 10 out of 10. The 13th story is entitled Oh, to Be a Blobble. This is a science fiction take on a classic O. Henry story, The Gift of the Magi. Let me talk about the O. Henry story and not about this story. In the O. Henry story, you might remember a couple loves each other and want to give each other a gift for Christmas, but they don't have a lot of money. So the man has a pocket watch and he sells it to get his wife a comb for her beautiful hair. And the wife cuts her hair and sells her hair to a wig maker to get a chain for her husband's pocket watch. Now, put a science fiction, Philip K. Dick spin on this story and you have Oh, to Be a Blobble. I give it 9 out of 10. The 14th story is a novella, What the Dead Men Say. What if after someone dies, if you freeze them, you could actually tap into their brain for about a year? The electrical energy there could still operate. This time could be spread out over many years, depending on how often you woke the brain. So a person could direct things, say for his company, after his death. And that's what a rich man who has passed away wants to do. This is a story of wealth, influence, employees, and descendants. What if the rich man couldn't be brought back to half-life? But from outer space, you start to hear his voice. Is it him? I give this story 6 out of 10. And the last story is called Pay the Printer. The world has turned to ash. We're in a post-apocalyptic future. An alien race has come to help the surviving people of Earth. These aliens are able to replicate items that the people bring to them. However, these replicants have a shelf life before they turn to dust as well. The aliens who've come to Earth are now dying. What happens if you can't replicate further items? Will mankind survive? What is the value in replicating rather than building? This story might be reflecting on our consumer society. I give it 7 out of 10. This is a strong collection of stories. I think we see some of the themes from these stories of the 50s and 60s that we later on see in Philip K. Dick's novels. I found them entertaining and surprising at times, weird and wonderful ideas, and some satire. If I do the math from the stories, I come out with 7.6 out of 10, but I think I'll raise that to 8 out of 10. Recommended. So, have you read some of these stories? What do you think these stories are about? Let me know in the comments below. As always, keep reading.